Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast, episode 280. I'm Brandan Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Yeah, finally I'm joining you. It was a difficult week to get this done, but we've inched along until we could get to this point, and here we are.
Yes, sometimes car troubles happen, and see, the good thing is when things come up, Adam, you know, we always talk about field goal kickers, how you aim between the goalposts, and that way, if there's room for error. And see, if we were aiming for the left goalpost this week, this probably wouldn't have happened. But we aimed for the center, and here we are.
Yeah, exactly. We would have been wide left, man. So glad to get it done. Thanks for making the time here while you're on the road with the fam. I know that that's a lot harder than a lot of people might think. But here we are, and we get to talk about all sorts of fun Seahawks stuff that happened over the course of the week. I mean, we got playoffs, and I'm excited about that. And, and then we've got the Niners game, which was, well, a game that maybe is a game that I've never seen a game more defined by the phrase "a game of inches" than that Niners game.
Yeah, you have to go back to, the Rams-Titans game in the Super Bowl, and even that one was maybe a full yard short of the end zone. And I guess if you were watching any San Francisco 49ers football, the game of inches played in at the end of the Falcons game. So instead of losing by a couple inches like the 49ers did to the Falcons, now they win by a couple of inches, just as Jacob Hollister just kept out of the end zone. Oh, it was so close. And Adam, as the Seahawks went down, I feel like we can start at the end of that game because, everything that happened, in the final 2 minutes, essentially, except for the Marshawn Lynch touchdown, which was amazing. We can get to that too. But, the final 2 minutes, the Seahawks, they get the benefit of a call, an unsportsmanlike conduct call on the 49ers in the last 2.5 minutes of the game that puts the 49ers back at 3rd and 17. And at that point, you got to be thinking, okay, here we go. 3rd and 17. This feels like something that we can stop. They nearly don't stop it. And when they got the ball back in that situation, though, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, they get the ball back there, and I'm thinking, man, what a tight game. This is the type of moment that Russell Wilson is built for. This is the type of moment that the Seahawks practice for. It's their championship mentality that they always talk about. And I felt like they were going to have a hell of a chance to win it in that last couple minutes. And DK Metcalf comes to play and just beasts out really all game, but really comes to play in that last drive. Tyler Lockett with a couple key catches, and then you get down to the 1 inch line, and you're thinking, well, here it is. Spike the ball, run beast out there, and just hand the ball 4 times, and the karma of the universe will be completely restored, and they lose track of the play clock.
There's not much more frustrating things that can happen than losing track of the play clock, and the weird thing was, it wasn't even close. They weren't even up at the line when they had the delay a game call, really. I'm trying to think of where exactly they were, but you have to think with 15 seconds left and the communication cuts out from the headset to the quarterback. At that point, you got to be thinking, we got to hurry this now.
Yeah, you would think they'd be thinking, we got to go, but also, too, you would think that they've practiced this sort of situational football moment where, it's couple seconds left. You've just clocked the ball. You got to get that jumbo package out there and just slam it down their throat. And you think that after the play that shall never be talked about again, they would have this as something they practice on the regular, and yet somehow we're caught off guard. And at that point, it was totally deflated. I was like, oh, well, that's it. That's the game, right? But then it wasn't. Russ had an opportunity to hit Jacob Hollister earlier in the right corner of the end zone, just missed him. A game of inches. I want to go back to that a lot because then Russ, obviously hits Hollister, and he's an eighth of an inch short. And it wasn't just that last play that when I say a game of inches, I've never seen a game like that. There's plays from the first half all the way sprinkled throughout this game, whether it's the drive that Deebo Samuel scores on in the first quarter where Dixon backs him up with a punt, they have them in 3rd and like 9, and they get the first down by the hair of their chinny chin chin. And then they go down the field and they get the pass off to, or they, get it to Debo. He runs that sweep to the outside, and his foot was beyond close to going out of bounds there, but doesn't somehow. And then you see Debo miss the 2-point conversion later on in the first half by just the slightest of margins. And then you see KJ Wright blow up a screen pass towards the end of the first half that could have, if just another inch, that was a backwards pass, and it's a fumble, and they recover, and they score a touchdown, or at least put themselves in position. You got Marshawn Lynch stuffed on 4th and inches at one point in the game. I just have never seen that phrase come to fruition as much as it did in this game. And they get down there for that final series, and just an 1/8 of an inch, man. And that changed the whole NFC playoff picture. I mean, that's what's crazy about it. And we haven't even talked about the pass interference that was not called.
Yeah, Hollister involved in so many of these too, right? You go back to that second pass to Hollister when it's 2nd and 10 from the 12-yard line. And yeah, Russ just overthrows him. He's really wide open, and if Russ just catches it a little bit sooner, he was rushed as he was trying to scramble up in the pocket a little bit, and that could have been the touchdown right there with about 42 seconds left. And with 42 seconds left is when he hits Ursua on the 4th and goal. And, at that point, I wasn't even that mad that Ursua didn't get in, because I'm thinking, okay, at least we got the first down. There's 40 seconds on the clock. This is going to leave the 49ers with that much less time after the Seahawks get this touchdown. And so when they spike the ball, that they have 3 tries. I figured for sure they were going to get one of those 3 tries. And, yeah, Hollister comes up just short. So really, we spent a lot of time talking about the delay a game call and it coming back 5 yards. But to me, in my mind, I didn't think that was necessarily the end of the game. It was just, backed up 5 yards, and Russ was going to have 3 tries to get it in, and they were going to do it. So, you said it was a little bit deflating. It didn't really bother me at all. I expected one of those plays to hit. He misses Lockett on that second down throw. Fortunately, it was one of those passes where he puts it in just the right spot where only, if Lockett were to come down with it and the defender ends up coming over, catching the pass, but landing out of bounds. Then you have the Hollister interference, which let's talk about that for a minute, because 3rd down, and I thought for sure this was the situation that the NFL had set up to at least stop the play and take a look at it. I wasn't convinced in the moment that it was definitively pass interference. We didn't know. We didn't really have a lot of time to see if it might have been holding instead of pass interference. But you could tell from the replay that there was enough contact there to at least stop the clock. And I was shocked when they didn't do it.
I was shocked too. And not because, like you said, that it was overly egregious, but it was pretty dang egregious. I mean, it was one where I looked at it, I was like, come on, like, really no flag?
Yeah.
And again, like you said, isn't this new rule supposed to help guard against these sort of things? And isn't that the whole point of putting it in there? And you've seen the league kind of flip-flop on when they're going to take it seriously and when they're not. And it's almost as maddening as pass interference itself, like how subjective it is. Like the idea of reviewing it is unbelievably subjective somehow. And the standard has not been laid out very well. And even with that said, I mean, the Seahawks had a chance to win the game, so I'm not blaming it on that call or anything like that. It's just unfortunate that it wasn't at least reviewed. They may have upheld the no call. That would have been fine. Like, if they had just reviewed it, that would have been fine. I just wanted them to take a look at it. That's all.
Right. I mean, I think if they would have taken a look at it, they would have seen it was obviously pass interference, and nobody would have had any kind of issue with them going back and calling it after that point. But, at least take a look.
Yeah, it seems like that's what you should do as a responsible officiating crew. And I just don't understand, like, how that happens. I really don't.
It would have set them back up then without the delay of game to have the ball on the 1 yard line. And then we could have taken our shot with Marshawn, because everybody knew that was what would come in the next play, and the Seahawks would just have to execute it.
Right. And again, it would have like cleansed the entire Hawker of the world. It would have been great. But we didn't get that moment. But we did get a couple of nice Marshawn Lynch moments, including the skying touchdown. I mean, that was really fun. Did it not just feel amazing in that moment?
I know it was a bummer to lose the NFC West, but if I have any consolation prize to take away from that game, it's that moment. It's that moment with Marshawn going over the top. The only thing he missed out on was the crotch grab as he was going over the top. And had he done that, that would have just made the moment that much more better.
Yeah, that would have been the move there if he would have had the wherewithal, no doubt about it. But it was fun having him back in the game. But really, one of the things that really struck me in this game was how hard Travis Homer plays.
Yeah.
He's not super talented. He's not super fast. And he's not super strong. But gosh darn it, he plays hard. That was really fun to watch, his effort. And you saw Beast Mode get fired up about it on the sidelines, going up to Homer and being like, man, what you're doing right now, it's inspiring me. Like, that's the type of energy that Marshawn brings to the team that we'll need when we face the Eagles here on Sunday. I don't know how you felt after the game. I was bummed out, obviously, that we lost. But with that said, it wasn't the end of the world. We're going to the playoffs.
Right.
So that's fine. And, I mean, it's going to be a tough road to hoe no matter what you do in the NFC this year. That much is clear. And I guess after the game, just seeing that, once again, we went toe-to-toe with, quote-unquote, the best team in the NFC. I mean, I think that they have a good enough chance to beat anybody throughout the playoffs.
Well, and the place where it gives you a little bit of hope, too, is just the fact that this team on the road is 7-1. And after I look at that, the last few games on the schedule, when I look at just how badly things went for them in December in terms of the win-loss column, I mean, they started 10-2 on the season after the first 12 games, and they finish 11-5, and 3 of those losses coming to NFC West rival teams. And I know a lot of that has to do with injuries, but part of it just has to do with the way they played terribly against division rivals, not necessarily against San Francisco, but definitely against the Cardinals and definitely against the Rams. Again, yes, there were injuries, but it just felt uninspired, a lot like it kind of did in the first quarter against the 49ers. I didn't feel like they were all that inspired in that early part of the game, which was kind of weird when you consider just how strong they played in the second half.
Well, to me, it felt like in at least the beginning of the game, the defense was playing with a lot of energy. The offense seemed to be the problem at that point. I mean, I understand they were giving up points, but they were playing hard. And really, I felt like the effort and the energy and the want to was there. Really, the problem was all of the perimeter runs early in the game, and then once again slants. Yeah. I mean, that was basically the majority of their offense. And my God, I just want Cam Chancellor to somehow get in the Wayback Machine, come back like Marshawn did for one game against the Niners, and just blow George Kittle off the catfish field.
Didn't we at least get a sense of that, though, when KJ Wright decleated George Kittle?
Yeah, we did a little bit. And that felt nice. And that's when KJ started to really perk up to the screens and kind of got him out of that part of their game towards the end of the first half and then going into the second half. And that made a big difference. And it allowed the Seahawks to focus a little bit more on the receivers and that sort of thing. But really, the interior run game, up until late in the game, the Seahawks controlled very well. But the perimeter run game was a disaster all day.
Yeah, the perimeter run game was a disaster, and it was that and not getting to the quarterback. They did get 2 sacks in the first half, but when I look at the stats at the end of the game, Handsome Jimmy under pressure for just 5 of 24 dropbacks, and 2 of those 5 were sacks. I mean, that's unacceptable.
Yeah, of course we'd like to see more. It's not surprising from this team. That's something that we looked at coming into the season. I mean, so the idea that it's here at the end of the season too is, again, not all that surprising. But
well, I do think in a way it's not surprising, but it is a little bit surprising when you look at how they use their personnel. And in that Week 10 game against the 49ers, we saw them use Shaquem Griffin. And that was kind of how, we've had this mantra among the two of us going into these last few games that you get pressure if it's Clowney, Anza, Reed, and Griffin. And Griffin had 0 snaps on the defensive side of the ball. He had a few special team snaps, but 0 snaps on defense.
Yeah, that's very odd. It's difficult to understand the decision-making process there when you are struggling to get to the quarterback, and that is something that Keem has helped provide in his energy. I mean, just look at his game against the Eagles a few weeks back. I mean, that's a huge example as to the type of pressure he can bring and the type of energy he brings to the defense. It's infectious in a similar way that Marshawn brings energy, right? So I don't understand. I mean, I'm not a professional football coach, but I think I would be able to keep track of the play clock and also play one of your more talented rushers when you need to get pressure on Jimmy G in passing situations. I think I could manage to get those things done as a coach.
Those seem like a couple, relatively easy things. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but, you brought up the play clock issue. And listening to Pete Carroll, this was one of the questions that he was asked on every single radio show. He was asked in the press conference. And he is protecting somebody, obviously. And I have to wonder who. Is he protecting the guys who get the personnel onto the field? Is he protecting Marshawn Lynch, who we saw not even in his helmet on the sidelines leading up to that play? Who do you think the blame goes to in that particular moment of why dudes were so late getting on the field to not even be able to get a snap off?
Well, the buck always stops at the top. And on the offensive side of the ball, that is offensive coordinator Schottenheimer.
Right.
Like you gotta, as an offensive coordinator, be aware of that sort of situation. Have a jumbo set to bring in that moment and go ahead and cram it down the throat and win the game. Like you need to be prepared for that. That should be something that is practiced at least once during the week. That should be something that everybody has in their mind in those situations. I mean, that's one of the things that Belichick does so well is prepare his team for the most pressure-packed situations, because that's really what these games come down to, and that's what we saw.
Well, and I have to think that, what else is Schottenheimer thinking of in those moments when they miss the 2nd and 10 and they have a 3rd down and they take their time out? And then, they miss on 3rd down. And right before that 4th down play, they take a timeout. And then the 49ers, they take a timeout. So there was so much time in between those moments. So it was 4th and 10. You had to at least be thinking, okay, well, we have this play call. And what happens if it is a 1st down? In this next play rather than a touchdown? I can't imagine why that wasn't going through the minds of the coaches with having back-to-back timeouts on either side of the football.
Yeah, it's that extra time that was baked in to that situation that makes you really wonder, because you have plenty of time to ponder what is going on. I mean, I know both you and I, looking at that 4th down play, we're looking at it and being like, hey, we don't have to score on this. There is an opportunity to get a 1st down. Like the second Ursua caught it, and it was pretty clear right as he caught it, he was tagged pretty quickly, and you knew he wasn't going to score. But in your heart, you're going, oh, no worries, it's 1st down, let's go. And somehow that was not in the mindset of the offensive coordinator. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. And I guess we'll leave it with that. I know I was also frustrated, but also optimistic. I'm trying to think of a similar feeling just as a Seahawks fan. And I go back to that 2015 playoff game against the Carolina Panthers where they were just getting smoked in the first half. And then they come back and they have such a great second half and yet come up just short at the end. And I guess I kind of felt like that at the end of this game, except now the Seahawks get to play next week, and they get to do it on the road where they are 7-1, and they get to do it against an Eagles team that they've already beat earlier on this season, an equally banged up team in terms of injuries, maybe less banged up when you consider the amount of injuries the Seahawks have had to deal with. And here they go. Now they're back in the playoffs, and we get to see this road warrior team really go to war on the roads.
Yeah, and we'll see how that turns out. I know a lot of people are like, it's the 7-9 NFC East champions, whoop-de-doo-dah day.
9-7,
be fine.
yeah.
It's a cake. Might as well be 7-9. Like, that's how bad they played all year. Like, in my mind, I just felt like all season, like whoever won the NFC East would be 7-9. So in my mind, they are 7-9. So the 7-9 Eagles, we go and play them. But no, seriously, the 9-7 Eagles. And it's just, this still is a dangerous enough team for you to have concerns about. I mean, look back to the game that they played earlier in the season, and it wasn't exactly like the Seahawks blew them out. That game was a struggle, and I understand the wind was blowing a zillion miles an hour and all that during that game, but I don't know that the Seahawks can rely on producing 5 turnovers again in that game.
That was such a big part of that win against the Eagles. And yeah, Carson Wentz, we haven't seen him in the playoffs yet, which is kind of weird because of all the years that he's been a quarterback for the Eagles. I think, Carson's probably played a playoff game by now, but no. And just the way the Eagles have been so clutch in the playoffs too. But, whether that was Nick Foles or whether it's going to be able to carry over to Carson Wentz, I saw an interesting statistic going into this game that quarterbacks in their first playoff start since 2013, so Russell Wilson isn't a part of this, a 5-15 record in their first playoff game. And if you go back to 2000, which does include Russell Wilson, it's 26-42. So it tends to be that rookie quarterbacks, or not necessarily rookie quarterbacks, just quarterbacks in their first playoff start, generally have a losing record.
Yeah, that may be a true fact. But one of the things that can help the Seahawks in giving Carson Wentz an 0-1 start to his playoff career as a starting quarterback is to take advantage of the 2 opportunities that Wentz will give you every game to pick him off. He'll make 2 really poor throws. Now, whether it's reading the coverage badly or just kind of uncorks one that just doesn't go where it's supposed to go. And Wentz will do that. He throws off his back foot a ton. So that is something that you need to be aware of. And, if you look at that Eagles offense as a whole, as banged up as they are and the lack of talent they have on the outside with the receivers, they really kind of found their stride going down the stretch, doing 2-3 tight ends or 2 tight ends and 2 backs and that sort of stuff. And that's really where they're thriving on the offensive side of the ball. So the Seahawks are very much going to have to be aware of screens, the delayed draws up the middle. That's their bread and butter run play. And then you got to blanket Goddard and Ertz. And I don't know if Ertz is playing. Every time I look, it seems to be something different, so I'm not sure. But, those are your guys.
Yeah, I think Ertz and Miles Sanders were both listed as questionable going into the game, so they weren't ruled out. The only guy who was ruled out was wide receiver Nelson Aguilar. So that's good news for them in a way, that they will have some of their big playmakers, especially Zach Ertz. I think going into this game, if they didn't have Zach Ertz, you could say, pretty much game over for the Eagles.
I don't think you can say that at all. I actually think Goddard's actually a pretty darn good tight end as well. And when you see George Kittle run all over the field, it does make you pause for a second when you think that there might be another guy that could do that to this defense. And I think that if they really concentrate, the screen pass is a huge part of this Eagles offense. And if they can be sure to shut that down early, I think that makes everything else they do a lot harder for them.
Well, the good news for the Seahawks, and talking about injury-related news, Quandre Diggs expected to play in this game. He was a full participant in practice in the last couple days of the week. So that's one of the guys where you look at, and sure, Jadeveon Clowney, he is also important on that defensive line. You want to be able to get pressure on the quarterback, and he's been the best guy to offer that pressure for the Seahawks defensive line. But it really feels like such a different defense with Quandre Diggs in there. And for him to be back in this game, oh my gosh, especially after watching Lano Hill in that game against the 49ers. Welcome back, Quandre Diggs.
Yeah, I think that is a gigantic upgrade for the secondary. I mean, we've seen the difference that Diggs makes in the difference that he makes has made him a Pro Bowl alternate when he was traded like mid-season.
Right.
And so that is super encouraging news. I truly believe Clowney will play. I mean, I know people hint around it and like, I don't know, maybe, but he's playing.
Yeah,
I think he definitely plays, and we'll see what the Seahawks defense can dial up. I mean, if they can be as dominant as they were the first time that they saw the Eagles, this could be a game that Seattle can kind of get right, feel good about, and go on in the playoffs and maybe get that third crack at the Niners.
How happy were you with George Fant in this last game against the 49ers, because going into that game, I thought, Jamarco Jones, just leave him in there. He has something to learn and build off of from going up against Chandler Jones the week before. And I didn't view Jamarco Jones and George Fant is really that different of a guy, but holy smokes, George Fant, he held his own in this last game.
He absolutely did. I think I said on the last pod, I'd much rather have Fant out there, which I know probably knocked over a bunch of people with a feather, because of the criticism I've had of him in the past, especially early on in his career. But you saw him fill in for Dwayne Brown earlier in the season and really acquit himself well. And I was confused as to how Jamarco Jones was out there for the Cardinals game. That just didn't make a lot of sense, unless maybe Fant was hurt or they're trying to protect that 6 offensive line setup. I don't know.
They did use Jamarco as the 6th offensive lineman now against the 49ers. But yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily know why they did it the way they did against Arizona, but especially after seeing how well George Fant did now against the 49ers.
Well, and you may get to see in this game a left side that features both Jamarco Jones and George Fant, with Upati having the neck stinger. I mean, it's not a certainty he's going to play.
He's not. He is listed as questionable, but he didn't practice at all this last week. So I do feel like Upati probably is going to play. But yeah, with Ethan Posick, your backup left guard who had been backing up Upati and was the backup center. And gosh, you hope Joey Hunt with that fibula injury that he's going to be okay. But he was a full participant on Friday, limited on Thursday. So you have to think that he's going to be good to go for this game. And he's had that fibula injury now for weeks, which I don't think I've ever heard anybody ask exactly what's going on to how you can have a fibula injury unless it's like a bone bruise or something.
Yeah, man, backup center lives matter. And we should know a little bit more about Joey Hunt's fibula. No doubt about it.
I want to know. This is how deep into the stuff that we get sometimes. But yeah, in terms of guys that are questionable, Jerron Brown questionable, Mike Upati questionable. The only 2 guys listed as out are Dwayne Brown. And, Pete keeps saying how he thinks that Brown's going to play. And, Malik Turner, he's listed as out. And then I'm kind of curious, Michael Kendricks still on the roster. They haven't moved him over to injured reserve just to add another roster spot, but he's the other guy listed as out.
Yeah, I wonder if that has to do with some sort of contractual thing, as far as like Kendricks being on the roster for a playoff game. Maybe there's money involved there, and since he's been a good soldier, you're trying to hook a dude up. I don't know. It's hard telling not knowing. I know that much.
But on the side for the Eagles, you got Zach Ertz as questionable, and then their tackle Lane Johnson listed as questionable.
Yeah, and it'd be nice if Lane Johnson decided not to play. That'd be cool.
Yeah, with Lane Johnson out and Brandon Brooks, their Pro Bowl guard who's done for the year, then that might give our pass rushers, an actual chance to get to Wentz, apparently.
It certainly wouldn't hurt. And if you do get to Wentz, you can rattle him a little bit. He's not quite as mistake prone as, say, like Jimmy G when you get pressure on him.
Yeah.
Wentz is able to move around a lot more and do more with his feet. And he's a little more courageous, I think, in the pocket overall. But, hey, that defensive pass rush is going to have to come to play. Like I said, I'm really concerned about screen passes to Miles Sanders. And, again, just draw plays up the middle. You stuff that, and I don't think they have enough in the passing game to really hurt you. And then you give Russell Wilson and company a chance to go out and attack that Eagles secondary, which does have some holes. I mean, especially up the seam, they give up a lot of big yardage there. That's a route that Russell throws well. And I believe with Luke Wilson potentially being back for this week, that could be a place that he could exploit. Hopefully DK Metcalf can come out and continue what was an amazing effort against the 49ers. I was really blown away by his production in such a big game that was basically a playoff game. The contributions of the rookies, whether that was Homer or Metcalf, was really just astounding. Or Ursua, you betcha.
Yeah, it was kind of wild just to see Ursua have that kind of impact on a 4th down play with the game on the line, and that's his very first catch in the NFL. What a cool moment. If it would have gone for a touchdown, that would have been even better, but, unfortunately we didn't get that. Unfortunately, he didn't get that. And to me, this game against the Eagles, and really the entire playoffs this year for the Seahawks, we are relying on just the gameplay of Russell Wilson going forward, because we know this defense definitely not the same as in past years. It really is the offense that's going to carry this team, and you got to count on Russell Wilson, and it's going to need to be him making those connections to DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jacob Hollister, and hopefully Luke Wilson's back too.
Yeah, and that was one thing in the 49ers game I thought that Russell did very well, was just his movement in the pocket. He was masterful. That was one of his better games of just being able to search out the voids in the pressure that was coming at him, and really just, I don't know how many times he would just split two guys and climb the pocket. And geez, talk about game of inches, going back to that, like the touchdown pass to Lockett where he drags his right foot behind him to stay behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's that sort of awareness that he displayed all game long. He is locked in, and that's the Russell Wilson we need in the playoffs and against the Eagles, is that locked in Russell Wilson. And at that point, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, I honestly believe that they'll beat the Eagles. I think that that's going to happen, unless weather conditions are really terrible. I heard it might be windy again.
Yeah.
I don't know. But this feels totally winnable, but I definitely have a little bit of, kind of that buyer beware sort of thing. Just a little bit of my hackles are up a bit.
Well, when every single game does come down to the last couple drives, that there's going to be cases like in this last game against the 49ers where, maybe Russell Wilson doesn't get it done. I know we're kind of conditioned to feel like he is going to get it done every single time because he does it more often than he doesn't. But if Pete Carroll's going to mess around once again and allow this to be a one-score game at the end of the game and just relying on Russell to go out there and put a game-winning drive together, it's not always going to work out. But I do feel like they get this one done, and then they go back on the road to play the San Francisco 49ers next week. Hopefully that's the case, and that's what we're going to be talking about next week. And I am kind of curious because we talked a little bit about Marshawn and his touchdown in this game against the 49ers, but I kind of wonder now in this game against the Eagles, what's your gut feeling? Are we going to see them do kind of a mixture between Homer and Lynch, similar to what we saw against the Niners? Or do you think that, hey, maybe they step up Marshawn's carries a little bit more now?
I hope their carries flip-flop. And the only reason I hope for that is not because that's an indictment on Travis Homer. Again, played his heart out, have nothing but respect for the kid. Like, did an amazing job for the skill set that he has. But you saw with Marshawn's limited touches in the 49ers game is that every time he was in the backfield, the Niners were geared up and just geeked out of their minds to stop Marshawn because they knew it was going to be a run to Marshawn. That's the only reason he's in the game,
right,
for the few times that he steps foot on the field. And so that made it a lot tougher on him. I mean, you still see him break a couple runs in there, even with that geared up mindset by the Niners. So I think if you get beast mode out there a little bit more often and have it mixed up with the passing game of Russell Wilson, it keeps the defense off balance a little bit more. They can't key on him quite as hard, and he's able to rip off a few more big runs. And once he gets going, there's no stopping him. And he said himself that his legs started to feel stronger through the end of the game. And Pete Carroll is amazed that after not playing for as long as he did, no worse for wear. Feels good.
Yeah, you got to like that. And, you say flip-flop for the two guys, but, Marshawn actually did get more of the carries between the two. I mean, maybe not more of the touches because you had the 12 carries by Marshawn in the run game.
I didn't look at the box score. I don't believe this at all. No way.
Homer had 10 carries for 62 yards, and so 6.2 yards per carry for Homer. Marshawn had 12 carries for 34 yards and the touchdown. So Marshawn had 2 more carries, but overall Homer had 15 touches because he had 5 catches for 30 yards.
Before looking at the box score, did you believe that was the case? Is that how it felt during the game?
No, it didn't feel that way at all. And I think part of it was the anticipation. I think as fans, you hung on every carry that Marshawn was going to get. And with Homer, it was just kind of, here we go. It's okay. Homer's getting the ball now, and it just didn't impact you emotionally like the Marshawn Lynch carries did.
Yeah, and it felt like the Travis Homer carries kind of came more in the flow of the offense, where Marshawn is like, oh, it's short yardage, throw him out there,
right? Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know. It felt different than that. That was surprising to me.
Yeah, I could tell when you said to flip flop it, and I'm like, well, then Homer gets more, and that's not what you're saying. But I would like to see Marshawn maybe get the ball a little bit more. But the Eagles' defense notoriously stingy with in the run game. They're number 3 overall in the league, and we had Rashad Penny with the 100-yard game against the Eagles last time. So I am a little bit curious to see how the Seahawks go back to the run game in Philly, and especially if it's a windy type day, because they're going to really need that ground game.
Yeah, maybe if it's windy, but you saw kind of what their game plan is going forward here now that Carson and Penny are gone. And they were really, especially in that first half, I mean, they were much more relying on Russell Wilson's arm as the straw to stir the drink, so to speak. And that was what everything was feeding off of, not vice versa, which is what, the team had kind of played to earlier in the year when you had both Carson and Penny.
Yeah, 40 attempts on the day for Russell, and there's not many weeks where you see Russell get quite that many attempts. And so, yeah, I would expect them to go a little bit more pass heavy, and yeah, hopefully you get the same kind of contributions from Metcalf and Lockett now. And even David Moore. Adam, I felt like in this last game, yeah, David Moore only had 2 catches for 30 yards, but I feel like we found a role for David Moore now. He's not just the contested catch guy down the sideline. He's the find the zone in the middle of the field and dump it off to him and let him run around in space a little bit in the middle of the field.
Well, we were told that's what his real strong suit was, right? Was once you have the ball in his hand. I mean, Pete always talked about him much like the Niners talk about Deebo Samuel, when he gets the ball in his hands and kind of becomes more of a running back than anything. And they've always talked about David Moore and his ability to do that. So it'd be nice to see them exploit that skill set. No doubt about it. I'd love to see a big day, have a nice, easy win for a change. And maybe we got Russell Wilson's clunker, so to speak, out of the way as far as him not coming through in that final minute.
Yeah.
And that one's now out of the way. And so now, the next 2-3 times that situation comes up, he's going to come through. It's a lot of averages.
He's got his one clunker out of the way. Now he can finish the season strong and take the Seahawks all the way to the Super Bowl. It's just going to be that easy for him.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, after the Rams and Cardinals games, if you would have asked me, does this team have a legit shot to go to the Super Bowl, I'd have been like, that's pretty tough. And then you see him come out in a playoff atmosphere and play the Niners as close as you could possibly play them. And, I mean, heck, a few bounces here and there, a good break, and you could easily see this team in the Super Bowl. It is totally plausible.
It is plausible, and I don't want to get my hopes up too much because I felt like going into last year playing the Cowboys. Yeah, I thought they were going to beat the Cowboys and move on to the next round of the playoffs, and we see that when you get to the playoff time of year, that nothing is guaranteed beyond the extra week. Anybody can beat anybody. We saw the Dolphins beat the New England Patriots when the Patriots had a potential bye on the line, and they're doing it in their own house, and so now the Patriots have to play on Wild Card Weekend, and yeah, things can happen in the NFL that really don't work out. And gosh, yeah, I go back to this game against the Niners and just how much different things would have gone in the entire NFC picture had this one game gone differently.
Yeah, it would have been a monstrous change in the entire standings, but it's going to be an interesting playoff, especially from the NFC side of things. I mean, I don't know about the AFC. It really doesn't entertain me that much. I mean, it's Chiefs or Ravens, take your pick, right? I mean, maybe Patriots too, but it's not nearly as wide open. I mean, Saints, Packers, Niners, us, like any one of those 4 teams, I'm looking at those and being like, legit chance.
Yeah. Yeah, as whoever comes to play in the playoffs. Even the Packers, they've had some stinkers toward the end of the season where you look at them
exactly.
And even in that Detroit Lions game where you're thinking, oh my gosh, here the Detroit Lions could beat the Packers in this situation. But when the Packers, when their defense is on it, like they were in that game against the Vikings, yeah, they could absolutely go all the way.
Yeah, all these teams do have Jekyll and Hyde tendencies, and the one thing I do like about the Seahawks is that they generally play to the level of their opponent.
Right.
And so now that we're playing good teams, they'll play good rather than playing crappy teams.
Right.
And then play bad, then you're super frustrated.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that sums it up well, just in terms of our expectations going forward. Yes, play the good teams well now that you're here. Now you can put the regular season nonsense behind you. And yeah, let's get going here.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. Going to be a big game. And maybe we'll wrap it up with that, and we'll continue on here to the second half of the show.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get right into welcoming some new members of the flock, Adam.
Really? Even after that tough loss?
Even after a tough loss, we got the number 3, the magic number 3 of flockers coming in, starting with Barb Tompkins, who came in at $3. Welcome to the flock to Barb.
Yeah, welcome to the flock, Barb. Yeah, every one of these 3 people are like huge troopers. Like if you come through by getting in the flock after a tough loss like that, like you're a true blue fan.
Jake Brandan, who we've had in the flock, but
yes.
He decided to go with the one-time contribution here for the upcoming season, getting away from Patreon. He comes in with $145.44, which is $12.12 for an entire year. Jake says the Hawks fell short by a few inches this week, and it's totally clear to me what has happened. I've been limping around with my quote-unquote active 53 $6 Patreon membership rather than seizing the 12-12 Hawkra cleansing I desperately needed. I apologize to my fellow flockers and hope this brings resolution to my grave error and judgment. If you guys can put out a post-game at 3:25 Montana time, it's clear you're doing all you can to push Hollister over the goal line. I can now clear my conscience in time for the playoffs. Go Hawks, from Jake.
By the power invested in me by the almighty savior, Russell Carrington Wilson, Jake Brandan, I declare your Hawkra cleansed.
You know, that's a good point. We didn't have anybody come in accepting blame for this loss, Adam.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way it was my fault. I mean, I sat in my hotel room. I turned off all my devices. I gave it my full focus. I had on what I believed to be the right gear. I don't feel like I made any missteps. Usually, I mean, I'll come clean. I'll be the first one to say when I screwed it up. But I don't know what I did wrong here.
Yeah, well, maybe it was Jake. Maybe it was just a culmination of him feeling like his Hawkra needed cleansed, and so that's why he took that step after that game. Because on my part, I didn't have beer leading up to the game, yeah. So you know what? I think I went dry the whole week just to be safe. So
that seems extreme. That's extreme. I'm not willing to go to those measures, dude.
At playoff time of year, coming up against the 49ers, knowing that with a win they were at least going to get a home playoff game, I was willing to take that sacrifice.
It's going to be way too hard to be sober during the playoffs. I don't think that's happening for me personally.
Well, you know what? I think there was some bad Hawkra in the Pick'em group, but we'll get to that. One more welcome to the flock, Tyler Blanchard in at $3. So welcome to the flock to Tyler.
Oh, welcome, Tyler. I bet you that Tyler was not the guy who brought bad Hawkra to the Pick'em group.
No, I have no doubt that it was his fault whatsoever. So welcome to the flock to Tyler. But yeah, we had about 10 people that came in and actually picked the 49ers against the Seahawks this last week.
Well, there it is. I didn't know. Now I know. I did my part. You did your part. And somehow 10 people screwed this up. Like, I mean, if they had weighed in with their Seahawks pick, it would have been that extra push to get Hollister over the line.
Yeah. 1 inch. One inch. That's all we needed.
I think it was a 1/10 of an inch, Brandon. It was a 1/10 of an inch, and 10 people picked against it. That's what happened. Yeah.
Oh, frustrating. Yeah, because I had to go in there, and I had one of our listeners email me, and she said, this is showing up as disqualified, and I know I didn't pick the 49ers, but it's showing that my team was disqualified for the week. But so what I have to do is I have to go in there, and if someone in the group picks a team other than the Seahawks and they get a point out of it, I have to go in there and disqualify that particular game so they don't get a point counted for picking against their team.
Oh, absolutely. I wonder that maybe it was a glitch in the Matrix. We've never had 10 people pick against the Seahawks like that. Not even in that dire mindset that a lot of us were going into that game. I think Yahoo Sports actually flipped 10 of the picks. I think this is a deep conspiracy. Where do all the tech companies reside, Brandon?
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, like San Francisco.
Yeah, and really Santa Clara, San Jose.
Exactly. They were trying to screw with our Pick'em League, our hawker of our listeners, to try to, get a win. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That's fine. Except for do better. That's yeah. I don't blame them. I think it was tech giants in Santa Clara.
Those jerks. Well, the one guy who came out of the week with the win, our good buddy Dave Bloomquist, Hong Kong Hawk, got the win. 13 points and was the clear winner this last week in the Pick'em.
Hey, all right for Bloomy. I mean, if anybody deserves it, I mean, he does. He tries real hard.
He does try hard. And, in a crazy week of week 17 where a lot of people were, getting 7-8 games right, he came out with the win. So congratulations to Dave. And let's go to an email here from Nathan in Bloomfield. Says, hey, guys, I wanted to relay a story that I heard through my cousin about his boss. His boss was sitting at a bar at Buffalo, New York, alone one afternoon. His relatively peaceful evening was interrupted by a slap on his back and a voice saying, hey, man, buy me a drink. That's the clean version of the sentence. So being a nice person that he was, and also not wanting to start anything with this giant man, he paid for the drink. After finishing the drink, the stranger said, do you even know who I am? Now starting to catch on to the fact that this huge man, some might say beast of a man, was of some importance. And he said, no, I have no idea who you are. And the stranger said, I'm Marshawn, man, and threw a jersey at him and just walked away. Anyway, thank you guys for the awesome show, and I can't wait to hear the episode after when Lynch runs it from the 1-yard line in the closing seconds of the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Go Hawks!
Hey, go Hawks. I like that scenario, no doubt about it. That's funny. I wonder if was his boss a Seahawks fan? Did he have on Seahawks gear? Is that why Marshawn was inclined to ask him to buy him a drink?
Well, I'm guessing since this was in Buffalo, and I'm guessing Marshawn was probably playing as a member of the Bills at the time. That's my guess anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense right there. And he wasn't as famous as he was, at that point in his career. I mean, he was losing his job to CJ Spiller, right?
Right, exactly. All right, well, thanks to Nathan for sending that story. That's kind of fun to hear. You can see Marshawn doing that, absolutely. Just asking a random dude in the bar to, in fact, demanding a dude in the bar to buy him a drink, and then at least they hooked him up with a jersey.
Who would say no, by the way?
No. Look, if anybody the size of Marshawn asked me to buy them a drink in the bar, I'm doing it.
Yeah, of course, dude. 3? How many do you need?
How many do you need?
Yeah.
All right, Adam. Well, we are on the road. I normally want to thank our 12-12ers that come in each and every month. It'll just have to be a thank you just from the two of us this week. But I do want to get into, I don't know if you have a do better this week, but I certainly have a better at life that we can close off the show. And I know all our 12-12ers and above are better at life as well. I think we'll get to that next week. And how do you want to close this out, Adam?
Oh, I can give you a quick do better if you've got a better at life, and we'll call it good.
Sweet.
My do better this week is for this guy, me. Because apparently when I fixed my Jeep for the third time to make the whole engine hold in one spot, didn't do it well enough. Broke again while I was out at the cabin, stranded out there for 2 days. Luckily, the girlfriend was very patient about it all and all that. My neighbor drove an hour and a half out to get me and rescue me today just so we could come do this show. So for my piss poor fabrication skills and, just lack of foresight, the 1/8-inch steel wasn't going to get the job done. Adam Emmert, do better.
Yeah, you know what, though? For you to have that mechanical aptitude to at least keep it going for this long. I mean, your Jeep isn't new.
No, it, what would it be now? 22 years old?
Yeah.
23 years old, yeah.
There's people listening to the show.
It's older than my kid.
Yeah, exactly. So, you're keeping that thing going. And so honorary better at life to Wayne then for helping make this show happen.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne Dog.
Let's give Wayne a producer credit for the show.
Perfect. All right, very good.
Wayne can put that in his LinkedIn profile.
There you go. It'll be right above Green Bay Packer fan. Yeah.
All right, Adam. Well, I am going to close this out then with a better at life for Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner. announced as members of the All-Pro team. Russell gets the second team All-Pro, but he did get 3 first-place votes, so nice to know that there is some competition still with Lamar. He's not going to get the MVP. Lamar Jackson is. It's pretty obvious to me at this point, but the fact that Russell shows up on the All-Pro team, even though it's a second All-Pro, that's his first All-Pro nomination of his career. So that's very cool for Russell Wilson. And then on top of that, Bobby Wagner gets number 5, and that's first team All-Pro nods for Bobby Wagner. And when dudes get 5 All-Pro nods, that's like automatic lock for Hall of Fame, maybe even first ballot Hall of Fame. And so for Bobby Wagner, for his 5th All-Pro nod, and Russell Wilson, both of those guys better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, that truly is astounding about Bobby. But to go back to Russ, like finally starting this year to get the recognition that we've all been clamoring for, and that does feel nice. But Bobby, holy smokes. Yeah, 5 all pros. Like, people talk about Pro Bowlers, everybody's a Pro Bowler. Like, pretty much, right? But when guys don't go and there's alternates and all that crap, right? Being named a first team All-Pro, those are the things that they really do look at when it comes time to Hall of Fame voting. That means you were the best at your position among all of your peers for 5 stinking years.
Well, and just to give you an idea, Walter Jones, a first ballot Hall of Famer, he had 4.
Right.
So
that's amazing.
And granted, I think we did talk about it when we were talking about the All 100 team. He did have some competition, with Jonathan Ogden and the dude for the Rams. So there was some competition in there for that first team All-Pro spot for tackle. But yeah, still, I mean, Bobby Wagner, he has Luke Kuechly, who has 5 of his own.
I was going to say, that's the thing. The idea that he ended up with it for 5 times throughout his career to this point, with the East Coast having the biggest Luke Kuechly boner that there ever could be, is really astounding.
And with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.